What's up, everyone? Today we are going over the Miami Dolphins as part of our mini series of breaking down each team this season. We're doing 32 episodes, so today happens to be the Miami Dolphins. They enter the season presumably with Ryan Fitzpatrick as the starting quarterback, and Tua most likely is going to see some time. When I do my projections, though, regardless of the position and regardless of the player, as long as I think that they're going to start, I project them out for all 16 games. So these numbers aren't going to be as accurate as other numbers that I've done for different quarterbacks and different players, but I'll give you my 16 game totals for Ryan Fitzpatrick if Tua decides not to play at all this year. Got him at about 3,600 yards passing, 60% completion percentage, 24 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. A lot of those interceptions coming as they're driving down the field in the fourth quarter, and he just throws that interception. We've seen that a lot when he was here in Buffalo too. So that's just what Ryan Fitzpatrick does.
Yep.
200 rushing yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns, giving him a total of 290 fantasy points using the scoring that I used, which is 6 touchdowns, 6 point touchdowns, and -2 for interceptions. So I'm hoping you have a little bit more to say about Tua than Ryan. So, but let's see what you got.
Yeah, for Ryan Fitzpatrick, I've mentioned it a few times, but he's more of a streaming option. He's going to have some big QB1 weeks because that's what he does. He's going to be a top 5 QB 2 weeks, and then he'll throw 5 interceptions the next. And, that's not a guy that I'm drafting, but in the right matchup, I'll play him. Tua has a huge impact on the rest of the pass catchers there, and you've mentioned this previously, but guys like Devonte Parker, who I think could have a big season. With Tua, they can have a solid season still, but rookie QBs, it's historically they don't perform as well. So I love Tua. He's super accurate. I think he has a really bright future. I like what they've done with that offensive line. From a fantasy perspective, I don't love him. I'm not really playing a rookie QB. He's not really as mobile. Joe Burrow has some upside rushing the ball. Tua doesn't really do that as much. He's more of a pocket passer. I could argue, and I've said this before, I think that in dynasty leagues that Tua could be better than Joe Burrow, just because I think from a quarterback standpoint, I think Tua is better than Joe Burrow. And I think if he never had that injury, it would have been clear that Tua was the number 1 overall pick. So I think that's the only concern is that hip injury, and based on what I've read, I think in the early part of his career, he'll have no issues. It could shorten his career as he ages and gets older. If he takes a lot of bad hits, he could have a shortened career. But I love Tua, and I think he's going to be the best QB in this class.
All right. Yeah. I've watched some tape on him too. I actually did an article on Tua when I was doing a rookie series, and just from what I've seen, he can throw the ball on a dime while running the ball. While running, he can throw it. He's so accurate with the football, so he can. I think the wide receivers might take a little bit of a hit, but I don't know. Over time in dynasty leagues, they might be worth drafting, but we don't know
Yeah.
how the rookie year is going to go. Um, Wide receivers are going to be coming up soon, but first we're going to talk about the running backs. A couple guys that they got: Jordan Howard, Matt Breida. This is one of those backfields that it's really tricky as far as fantasy goes. On paper, both of those guys and mixed in with the Miami offense, they quietly could have a really good offense and put up a lot of points, regardless with who's under center. But for fantasy, you kind of want a clear-cut number 1, and they just don't have that. Jordan Howard seems to be the short yardage goal line back, so you might get more touchdowns out of him. Matt Breida seems to be the better pass catcher out of the backfield. They both have some experience starting in this league. They both have been pretty successful on their teams that they played for. They both have been used the wrong way. Matt Breida could use a bigger workload. He didn't really get that in San Francisco, and Jordan Howard they're taking him out and putting in Tariq Cohen when they're within the 5 yard line for whatever reason they did that in Chicago. So I think both of these guys could end up being good for the Dolphins. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you think of them fantasy wise, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, I think Jordan Howard is going to score a ton of touchdowns this year. I don't think that they're going to get cute with him. That's what I always say about Matt Nagy's offense. from what I saw, he was just getting too cute with things. I mean, you have Jordan Howard, who's one of the better goal line backs. Give him the ball and let him score. It's Marshawn Lynch all over again. Just let Jordan Howard get to the end zone. So I think they both offer a lot of value this season. I've seen them continue to slip into the 10th or so round in drafts. And even though that you're not 100% sure about that situation, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see Jordan Howard score 10 touchdowns. He does have a little bit of ability to catch the ball as well. I mean, Matt Breida's probably primarily going to be the number one pass catcher out of the backfield, but Jordan Howard's going to catch a few passes. So I expect him to score a lot of touchdowns. And I think this offense is just better suited for him. They signed a lot of power run blockers this offseason. Jordan Howard's a up the middle, north-south kind of runner. He's not getting cute with it. He's going north to south, and, he's consistently average around right around 4.5 yards a carry. So I'd expect him to do that. But I really love Matt Breida, and I think that he was criminally underused in San Francisco. He was on pace for 915 total yards last season. So you're like, okay, that's solid, nothing to write home about. But he only averaged 29% of their snaps. I mean, that is incredibly low. And for him to almost be on pace for 915 yards on 29% of their snaps, I mean, that's really incredible, honestly. And I'm not, if he's able to get to even 40%, and I think this could be really close to 50-50, honestly, but if he even gets to 40, which I think is very reasonable, I mean, you're looking at easily, to me, 1,100 yards and, 40, 50 receptions. And that's really solid RB2 value, and he's really not going in that range right now. He's been going around, RB 35 or so, right in that range. So I think he offers a ton of value. And when I looked at that usage, I was really shocked to see how efficient he was, only being on the field as little as he was.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see being in a 50-50 split. There's a couple different backfields that are like this, but I think this is the trickiest one to kind of project and see how it plays out. Now, both of these guys end up going down. We didn't really touch on any of the other guys, but I mean, Kalen Ballage and Patrick Laird both have starting. They started in this league before too, as recently as last year.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Myles Gaskin, he's a late round pick back in 2019. He's another guy that you could stash him in a taxi spot, but it's so crowded back there that not sure what's going to happen. But after Howard and Breida, it would really have to be a significant injury for you to grab one of those other guys. But they have experience here, with the exception of Gaskin, but he's got some potential. Moving on to the wide receiver room here, a few guys. About 4 guys that I could bring up that we've at least heard of, or not heard of, but 5 guys that we've heard of, 4 guys that could actually make a little bit of an impact here. Devonte Parker finally broke out last year. Took him 5 years to finally do it. And then Preston Williams, he had an excellent first half of the season. Allen Hurns, we've seen him do some things in Jacksonville. He was kind of quiet last year. And Albert Wilson, who's been kind of up and down, going in there as more of their slot guy. He's got a little bit of speed to him, but with Devonte Parker finally breaking out and Preston Williams coming out last year, Albert Wilson kind of took a back seat. And then the other guy is Mac Hollins. We've seen I only bring him up because we've seen a little bit of him in Philadelphia. He has some starts under his belt too, especially with the whole wide receiver room in Philadelphia being injured last year. So he has some experience there, but it's kind of crowded for him to really be anything. It's Devonte Parker, Preston Williams, and then a bunch of flyers.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't brought it up yet, so I guess the opportunity is now. And I mean, I always talk about Chan Gailey being their offensive coordinator. In Chan Gailey's offensive system, he chucks the ball around. I mean, that's what they do. It centers around a really strong number 1 wide receiver. And I've mentioned several times that he made Stevie Johnson a number 1 wide receiver in Buffalo. He had Eric Decker and Brandon Marshall previously. So, I mean, he's had success with a number 1 wide receiver no matter where he's gone. And I fully expect that to be Devonte Parker here. I think people are reading a little too much into Preston Williams. I mean, he had solid numbers as a rookie last season, but people are acting like he was a top 10 guy when he was playing. I mean, he's a solid 4th wide receiver for fantasy purposes, and he's going right right around that range, right around wide receiver 48. So I think that's fair for him. He had solid numbers, but he was on pace for like 750 yards, 6 or so touchdowns. Nice numbers, but nothing where I'm going nuts over him. So I really like Devonte Parker. I think he finally showed that ability we all knew that he had. I expect him to have a big season. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a top 10 guy this season for the second consecutive year. Well, I think he was 11th last year, so close enough. But I think Devonte Parker is going to have another huge season in Shane Gailey's offense, and he's going right around wide receiver 22 right now. So I think it's not a ton of value there. I think that's fair for him based on the risk that he played, just because he's only done it one season. He's not a sure thing, but I like Devonte Parker. I think Preston Williams is being drafted fairly right now. Under the radar is Allen Hurns, who's still there. He actually put up some decent numbers when he was healthy. So if you're in a really deep league, I might take a flyer on him late in drafts. But besides that, I love Devonte Parker. Love that offense they're going to be in this season.
All right, going on to the tight end situation. There's really only one guy here, and I know you got some things to say about him, Mike Goseki.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you just talk about him, and then I'll just agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Mike Goseki is easily this year's Mark Andrews. He's currently going around tight end 15 or so. He's crept up a little bit, but I mean, that's fine with me. I think he's going to be a top 5 tight end this year. And I'll say this, I think long term, he's going to be Travis Kelce-esque. I've seen, in a short time last season, I saw everything that I've seen in Travis Kelce over the past 5 or 6 years. Goseki had the 5th most points over the last 5 weeks of the season, so we saw him continue to improve. One of the things that's really impressive, I didn't realize he ran a 4.55 40. And for a tight end, that is really impressive. And then it got me thinking, I said, okay, what did Travis Kelce run? Travis Kelce ran a 4.63, so people tend to think him as a quick tight end. Mike Goseki is just as quick. He's got great hands. He runs great routes, and I think he's going to be a top 5 fantasy tight end for years to come.
Yep, like I said, I'll probably agree with what you say, and I do. I like Mike Goseki. I think that he has all the potential in the world. I think that especially if Tua comes in, and we've mentioned it in other episodes how the quarterback and tight end relationship, the rookie quarterback or early quarterback and tight end relationship is something to keep an eye on. And in this case, it's another one where if Tua's playing, he might check it down to Goseki a lot, and you get some points there. Special teams, Jason Sanders is their kicker. Don't really have I don't know who their punt returner or kick returner is as of right now.
Yeah, probably Jakeem Grant, who they signed to a extension.
Okay, so he it's not really anything to write home about there. But
Nope.
Jason Sanders, we mentioned this in a couple other episodes too about how we target kickers, and Sanders reminds me not as a kicker, but like the situation reminds me a lot of what we were talking about when we talked about the Giants. How the offense is young, but they have the potential to move the ball, get them into field goal range, get a couple touchdowns on the board. So you're getting points from your kicker. So that's exactly where I see a guy like Sanders.
Yeah, and I think overall, I just don't trust him enough to draft him. I think there's better options out there. And I think the Miami offense is going to be pretty solid, but I think that there's better options out there in domes and higher powered offenses. So I'd leave him on the waiver wire unless he's a solid streaming option one week.
All right, and then finally the defense. They're starting to put together a really nice defense down there in Miami. A couple IDPs that I might keep my eyes on and try to grab. Linebacker-wise, Kyle Van Noy over from New England. He's probably the top one there. Rayquan Mcmillan, one of the other linebackers there. I mentioned it before. I really don't like to target cornerbacks, and especially shutdown cornerbacks. But Xavier Howard is a guy that, just because of his name and just the kind of player that he is, he's going to get drafted. But realistically, he's not going to get targeted as much as you want. But if you have to play a cornerback, if you're forced to play the CB position, Howard is a guy that I might grab. If you're forced to play the DB position, I probably wouldn't grab Howard, because you could grab a safety and actually get some points from from your player back there. Byron Jones, they just got over from Dallas, kind of the same situation. I mean, Howard is their CB1. That the whole AFC East is like stacked with defensive backs. I mean, with Jamal Adams over there in New York, and you got
For now.
Stephon Gilmore and Trey White, and now you got Xavier Howard in Miami with Byron Jones. I mean, they're crowded with talent back there, but fantasy wise, I mean, it doesn't help you out a lot. Other than that, they got. I mean, we talked about it a couple times in different episodes. Christian Wilkins, their defensive end, defensive tackle. He is. You don't really get a lot of points from your front three, front four, but if you have to play that position, he's a guy I would look at too.
Yeah, and I mean, not really fantasy relevant, but in my opinion, you could say Xavier Howard and Byron Jones are probably the best cornerback duo in the NFL now. I think that's going to be fun to watch this season. From a fantasy standpoint, I don't think that I would draft one player from the entire Miami Dolphins defense. When gasp. I mean, when you look at it, they just have a lot of nobodies and a lot of question marks right now.
Kyle Van Noy.
I mean, Kyle Van Noy's solid. He's not really a tackle machine, though. He's been a guy that consistently gets you, 7 or 8 sacks, and he doesn't have defensive line eligibility. And when I have a linebacker, I want a guy that racks up tackles. So, I'm not crazy about Kyle Van Noy. He's definitely the number one on this defense right now. For me, it's a very wait-and-see approach. You mentioned Rayquan Mcmillan. Their other starting middle linebacker is Landon Roberts right now. I mean, these are no names, but realistically, as the starting middle linebacker, these guys are going to have opportunities to get tackles. I'm not sure who's going to emerge from that group, but for me, this is kind of a situation to monitor. Don't draft them. Just pay attention to the waiver wire because they could be sneaky pickups if they end up getting over 100 tackles on a season.
All right, fine. The only other one that I do want to mention, I didn't want to mention him because he used to play for the Bills, but
oh, here we go, Shaq.
Yep, Shaq Lawson. He ended up getting signed this past off season, but playing in the position that he plays, he's listed as a defensive end, but he can play standing up too. So I know you.
I hope so.
I mean, you just mentioned about the dual eligibility. He might be like a linebacker, edge rusher on some platform, so that might be a position and that might be a spot where you'd like to grab him. He did sign a pretty decent contract. I mean, not like nothing crazy. They didn't break the bank for him, but a 3-year, $30 million contract for him, so averaging about $10 million a year. That's enough to, get him on the field and maybe do some damage for Miami and be a solid fantasy player for you. So the final thoughts on the Dolphins, I definitely think that they've improved a lot. I think that they could end up as the third team in the AFC East. I still see Buffalo and New England above them, and I see the Jets. I mean, they're going to be battling it out with the Jets for the last place, but I don't think it's going to be like a 3-win, 4-win battle for last place. I think it could be like 2 6-10 teams, a 7-9 team going at it, and definitely some improvements. Plus, they got a lot of picks next year too. So, I mean, within the next like 3, 4, 5 years, they're going to be stacked if they're not already.
Yeah, and I mean, the Jets kind of went under the radar last year. Everybody talks about them like they haven't won a game in 10 years. But, I mean, the Jets were 7-9 last year. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but they were actually pretty solid overall. The Dolphins went 5-11 last year. And, I mean, I'll try not to ramble about this too much, but I really like the direction the Dolphins are going in. And they had no business winning 5 games last season. I mean, people were talking before the season, are they going to win 1 or 2 games? And Brian Flores is going to be a top 5 head coach in this league for many years to come. I mean, it was impressive how he had a whole roster of no-name players come together, and they played hard for him. And you can just feel it sometimes when you watch a team that they just love their head coach and they buy what he's selling. So I love the future of the Dolphins. Tua, in my opinion, is a franchise quarterback. I really like how they placed a premium on the offensive line. nothing bothers me more than when a team spends a high draft pick on a quarterback and then he gets destroyed by a terrible offensive line. So I really like that they've been focusing on that. I think they can still make some improvements to that line. And that's one of the reasons I kind of hope Tua sits out this year, because I don't think that offensive line is 100% ready to support him. They have a lot of rookies, and I'd like those guys to work out those kinks before they put Tua in. So I love the direction of the Dolphins, and I mentioned before, I think the most important position in the NFL is not the quarterback. I think it's the head coach, and I think they have one of the best.
All right, so that's our Dolphins episode. Tune in next time for the next team that we're going to be doing for you.